What's up, slackers? Welcome to Book Cheats. Today we're going to be talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, Chapter 16. Now, at the beginning of this chapter, it starts directly after the last chapter, and Atticus is driving everybody home. Everybody sort of sneaks in the house because they don't want to wake up Aunt Alexandria, and they all go to bed. As Scout faded in and out of sleep, it finally hit her that Atticus had almost been killed. She started to cry, and Jem came into the room and comforted her. The next morning at breakfast, Aunt Alexandria was sort of disciplining the children because they had snuck out at night. Atticus said that he was super grateful that they had come, and Aunt Alexandria said that Mr. Underwood had Atticus's back the whole time, and that he didn't need the children's help. Atticus was thinking, and he kind of chuckled, and he said it's kind of funny because Mr. Underwood hates black people. Aunt Alexandria sort of gave Atticus a scowl, and she waited for Calpurnia to leave the room, and she told Atticus that he shouldn't say such things in front of Calpurnia. Atticus was sort of shocked, and he said that he could say anything in front of Calpurnia because she was a member of the family, and that Calpurnia probably already knew that Mr. Underwood didn't like black people because everybody in Macomb knew it. Scout was feeling sick that morning, and she asked if she could have some coffee, and after some begging, Aunt Alexandria let her have a little dab of coffee in her milk. Scout sort of interrupted their conversation, and Scout said to Atticus that she thought that Walter Cunningham was a friend. Atticus told Scout that Walter Cunningham was still a friend, and Atticus said that sometimes people just have a blind spot. Scout responded and said, "But they wanted to hurt you last night." Atticus tried to explain, and he said that when people get riled up, sometimes they can do terrible things, especially when you get a big group of rowdy people together. Atticus explains further and says that mobs of people like that are still made up of people, and that it took an 8-year-old child for them to realize that they were making a bad decision. Scout was still pissed over the whole situation, and she swore that on the first day of school, she was going to beat up Walter Cunningham's son, Walter. Atticus stopped her and said that she was going to completely forgive Walter Cunningham of the whole situation, and that she was not going to hold it over his son. Atticus got up to go because today was the day of the trial, and they had to start the proceedings, and Atticus told the children that he didn't want them to go downtown at all today. Atticus left, and after Atticus left, Dill came into the house. In true Dill fashion, Dill said that everybody in town was talking about how they staved off 100 men with their bare fists. Aunt Alexandria stared him down, and Jem told Aunt Alexandria that that's just how Dill talked. Alexandria told the children that they should only play in the yard that day, and the three of them headed outside to play. As they were playing outside, it seemed like all of Macomb County was headed downtown. They watched as endless people walked by the house, and people in carriages and riding horses went into town, all over the hustle and bustle of the trial. As all of these people passed by, Jem told Dill about who they were and their backstories were. Some of these people included Mr. X Billups, whose first name was just an X, and people thought it was really funny. Other people who passed by, who Jem told Dill about who they were and their backstories were, included Mr. Tenshaw Jones, Miss Emily Davis, Miss Byron Waller, and Mr. Jake Slade. Miss Maddie Atkinson came outside, and a cart full of foot-washing Baptists stopped outside her house and condemned her flowers. Miss Maddie Atkinson came back and quoted a scripture that said that people should be cheerful. Jem, Scout, and Dill walked over to Miss Maddie's house and asked her if she was going to court that day. Miss Maddie said that she was not, and she thought the whole situation of a man on trial for his life was morbid. Miss Stephanie Crawford came over. This is the lady who's super gossipy, who Miss Maddie was living with before when her house burned down. And Miss Stephanie said that she was going into town to check out the trial. Miss Maddie said that Miss Stephanie knew every little detail about the case backwards and forwards, and they might as well ask her to testify because she was so interested in it. When Atticus came home for midday dinner, he said that the entire morning was spent just picking a jury. and that the trial hadn't officially started yet. After dinner, Jem, Scout, and Dill decided to ignore what Atticus had said that they shouldn't go into town, and they walked into town. When they finally got into town, it looked like a county fair. There were tons of people outside with kids running around, and everybody was enjoying an early dinner. The groups of people were segregated between white people and black people, and Dill noticed a white man who was drinking out of a paper bag hanging out around the black people. Jem explained that the guy that hung out around the black people was named Mr. Dolphus Raymond. Jem told Dill that Mr. Raymond liked black people better than he liked white people, and that he even had a bunch of mixed kids. Jem explains that mixed kids are when white people and black people have kids together. And Dill says that he was really surprised because Mr. Dolphus Raymond didn't look like a trashy person. Jem said that Mr. Dolphus was actually pretty wealthy and he came from a really good family. Dill asked why Mr. Dolphus acted so strange though, because he drank whiskey in public and he hung out openly with black people. And Jem explains that it all started on Mr. Raymond's wedding rehearsal. Jem says that on Mr. Raymond's wedding rehearsal, his bride-to-be found out that Mr. Raymond was sleeping with a black woman, and she went upstairs, grabbed a shotgun, and shot herself in the face.
You shot yourself?
Marla, look at me. I'm really okay.
Jem says that Mr. Raymond hasn't been the same since, and that he's completely turned into a drunk, but that he was really good to his kids. Dill looks at the kids who are supposedly mixed and says that they look completely black, and Dill asks how you can tell if a person's mixed or black or white. Jem said that a lot of times you can't even tell, and that you just have to know. Scout's super surprised about this and wonders if she's half black.
I am not black.
Jem says that he asked Atticus if they were mixed somewhere down their line, and Atticus told Jem that there was no way to know, and that they could have came from a black family in Bible times or something like that. A noise suddenly went off, and everybody started to rush towards the courthouse. Jem, Scout, and Dill followed the crowd and went into the courthouse. It was super crowded as they were trying to get in, and Scout fell behind Jem and Dill. Scout decided to wait by the stairs and stay out of everybody's way and wait for Jem to find her. As Scout sat there waiting for Jem to find her, she heard a few conversations that were talking about Atticus and how people were shocked that Atticus was actually going to defend a black man. After all the white people got into the courtroom, black people were slowly allowed to come into the courtroom. Black people had a separate section that was the furthest away from the courthouse on the balcony, and a bunch of old white men made sure that they weren't sitting next to white people. Scout heard Jem shout from the second floor of the courthouse, and Jem was super pissed because Scout had lost them some chairs, and all of the chairs in the building were taken. As Jem, Scout, and Dill waited for all the black people to come in, they recognized one of the black people from the church, Mr. Reverend Sykes. Jem said hi to Mr. Reverend Sykes and said that Scout had messed up their seating, and Reverend Sykes said that he'd see what he could do. And after a few minutes, he came back and led the three children into the black area, and several black people got up and let Jem, Scout, and Dill sit in their seats. When Scout looked down at the jury, it looked like a bunch of farmers, and several of the jury looked like direct relatives of the Cunninghams. Scout describes the rest of the courtroom scene and focuses in on the judge. The judge's name was Judge Taylor. Judge Taylor was a super laid-back guy who held a very informal court, but still had an order to it. Scout says that Judge Taylor looked like a nice old man and looked like a typical judge. The chapter ends with Mr. Heck Tate, the sheriff, taking the witness stand, and everybody slowly quieting down. And that concludes the chapter. Thanks so much for watching Book Cheats. Thank you guys so much for your support lately. Please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. It really helps my channel out. You guys have an awesome day and slack on.